Tim. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me fine?
Recording in progress.
Hey, can you hear me?
No, Alberto, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello, mic test.
Hey, Patricia. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not me. That's good. Because Tim couldn't hear me.
Okay. Tin, I think
Pat, can you say something? Maybe something wrong on my end.
Hi, Tin. Can you hear me?
I don't think he can hear us. Patricia, do you hear me better like this? Or like...
Which one's better? I guess the other one, right?
The other one, yes.
Okay, that's the mic up here. So
Nice. How are you?
yeah, all good. How about yourself?
Good also. Where are you based again?
In Spain, in Barcelona. How about you?
I'm in the Philippines.
I've seen you in events now that I see your face, and I was like, I've seen you before in Polkadot events for sure.
Yeah, I'm everywhere actually. Okay. Can you hear us now, Tin?
So Chris is saying that he can hear us and see us from outside.
Okay, yeah. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, we hear you, Tin. How about you?
All right, yeah, I'm good now.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. Good to hear.
All right. Should we start?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I guess I will start first.
Okay, so let me understand a little bit of like the structure, right? So I will be speaking with Tin, generally speaking, and you'll be doing like the introduction and the sort of saying goodbye.
No, correct. So the agenda will be me first. So I will just introduce OpenGuild, and just a very short recap, just 15 minutes or 10 minutes maybe, and then the rest will be to Tin and to yourself.
Okay, perfect. And then Tin, you will just like start with the questions, and I'll just provide answers. And I mean, are we gonna get questions from the audience that you're gonna provide in the chat, or?
Yeah, actually, I already prepare a list of questions, and normally I would refer like keep the conversation normal, like natural. Depend on like your response. I'm gonna like try to
Recording stopped.
So yeah.
But yeah, you can definitely like interrupt me and jump in. Like I don't have a problem with that. But are there gonna be people like asking questions and you're gonna put them in the chat or something, or not really?
Usually like before, like when we call in Discord, like we have the community member post the question, but I'm not sure like how, because it's actually the first time when we record in Zoom. So I'm not familiar with this format yet.
All right, let's do it. No worries.
Okay, awesome. So I'll take the stage now. Let me just share my screen. Window. Oops. Okay. Okay. So to everyone, because we are now live, just so you know, two of you know, we are now live. So we're live streaming this call to all our social media accounts. So welcome to everyone. Welcome back, actually. It's been a while since we had this community call because, of course, we had to take a break for a while and see where we will go from the support of the Polkadot community so we can operate another year. So welcome back, everyone. And I'm very personally excited for this first community call again. This is actually our 43rd or 44th community call in OpenGuild. But yeah, welcome back, GM. So firstly, I want to introduce myself. I'm Patricia. I'm part of OpenGuild. I'm one of the core contributors together with Tin and Chris. And we also have three other team members in the team for marketing, community, and DevRel. So just to reintroduce OpenGuild to everyone, especially to the new ones who are in our community. So OpenGuild is Web3 hub of Polkadot in Southeast Asia, right? So for everything that's happening in Southeast Asia, that's OpenGuild. We are although we are a builder native community, and we act like a ecosystem growth engine for Polkadot in Southeast Asia, actually beyond Southeast Asia, because sometimes we lend our hand to other ecosystem teams who need our support or our manpower of OpenGuild in Hong Kong or in other East Asian countries, right? So OpenGuild plays a role in Polkadot's go-to-market strategy this year until next year, at least for the operations of OpenGuild. And more than just a community, we are on the ground in across Southeast Asia. As you mentioned earlier, Alberto, I look already familiar within the ecosystem because me, Chris, mostly we're on the ground. We're doing things. We're supporting the ecosystem. That's mostly Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore. So mostly we are activating developers, supporting the ecosystem projects, and we are always trying to onboard, the next wave of talents, Web3 talents, from this region. So we are doing this by workshops, meetups, incubation programs to make these enthusiasts or Web3 talents to be a Polkadot long-term contributors. So yeah, I mean, from the last year, we had some major hackathons and boot camps in Vietnam, in Philippines, also one in Singapore. I think that was during Token, or one in Thailand during the DevCon. And yeah, we onboarded quite a number of developers and contributors. Let me just check. Go to my next slide. Yeah, so these are just some of the meetups and initiatives that we're doing in OpenGuild. But this is just very, very small. We have quite a lot of initiatives, but I hope I have time, right? But anyway, so these are, we had the Polkadot meetups across the region, I think around 50 plus meetups. And with these meetups, with this conference presence for Polkadot, we're also, of course, trying to push promoting the Polkadot projects, like projects built on Polkadot, right? Like, let's say Hydration, Mytos, Hyperbridge, and all the things that we can try to collaborate within the ecosystem and outside the ecosystem, right? So we are trying our best to be official partners of activations in Southeast Asia, like major conferences like Southeast Asia Blockchain Week, GM Vietnam, Philippine Blockchain Week. This is just to make sure that Polkadot is always there, that always in the front and center of what's happening within Asia, right? So I think from here forward, aside from scaling Polkadot's presence in Asia, we also want to have a more local, a more empowered community, because we want to initiate, but of course, to make it sustainable, we want to support these local communities to do things by themselves sustainably, right? But of course, this won't happen without the initial support, initial guidance, especially on what things to discuss, what team to reach out to. So aside from events, though, we also have these available resources in OpenGuild. Tin did this for everyone. This is an open source. So we have open source slides, and then we also have video playlists. So these are the playlists that we did in OpenGuild. So we have this open Polkadot bootcamp. So for example, we had this bootcamp in the Philippines, and we used this, right? And we follow this structure. We also have these slides and some resources that Tin gathered, because these are existing resources, okay? Existing resources written by technical educators within the ecosystem. And the way we did this, we just put it all together and make it in a way that we think that's how you're gonna learn Polkadot or to build on Polkadot, right? These are all open source. I think this is one of the greatest things in Polkadot. It's all open source. Anyone can learn. But for open guilds, we also did this for easier or more convenient way of teaching and learning Polkadot, but also, gathering all the resources that we have within the ecosystem. So yes, that's quite a lot. So yeah, this one. So we have two video playlists. So we have PolkaVM and Polkadot SDK video playlist. And what else? So that's quite long for OpenGuild. We actually did a lot. We have one Notion board for everything that we did for the past year, and I will try to share it to everyone through our X account. So feel free to join our Discord and our X account to have that monitored also. We just reported it to the community and what we're trying to do for this next year of operations. So yeah, I'm gonna share this QR code very quickly. Please scan it and please join and follow us to all the X account to the X account that we have and Discord. Please also visit our website so you can more than what I'm saying is for you to also learn about us, what we're doing, everything that you can also contribute later on. For I think Teen would also mention how you can contribute more to the to OpenGuild through our GitHub, all things technical, right? So yeah, okay. So I will use this last minutes for Polkadot ecosystem updates. So first off, Polkadot Blockchain Academy. Polkadot Blockchain Academy is a sit-down classroom type education program of Polkadot. So this is mostly in real life event, but recently they did this PBAX, which is a virtual version. So wave one was done, wave two is almost done for the virtual version, and wave three will start next month. Now, in real life version of PBA, that's gonna be in Bali, in Indonesia. So that's from August 25 to September 13. Hopefully, I'm correct with the specific dates. Yeah, if you're interested, feel free to enroll. Although there's an exam for you to be fully admitted to this program. So next, Bifrost and Hydration. Bifrost just crossed 10 million dots taking search. Congratulations. Hydration now holds over 200 million in TVL. This is very huge. So congrats to both Bifrost and Hydration. And something new to Unique Network, it successfully demoed NFT transfers across Polkadot Asset Hub and Parachains. So I think they demoed it 2 weeks ago. So feel free to follow their X. I think it's posted there. Yeah, and lastly, for Peak, they are welcoming Alpha AI to their ecosystem. Alpha AI is a deepened project using drones to create high-res 3D maps. So they will start this in Hong Kong. So some exciting things happening within the ecosystem. Yeah, I think that's it from me. Again, welcome back to everyone, to our community members, and the stage is now yours, Tin.
Right. I guess you can see my screen now.
Yes.
All right. All right. Yeah, thank you, Pat, for like a very detailed explanations. Also, like work tool on like what kind of activities that we already did in the past year, like the very first year of OpenGuild, and what we are like recently gonna do, and also like upcoming things. And today we have like a very special guest speaker. That I think like if you like follow like the Polkadot ecosystem, you're gonna definitely know him. So GM Alberto.
Thank you, Tim. Great to be here.
Yeah, so Alberto is the founder of PaperMoon, and many of you guys may already like at least like heard about like PaperMoon if you like in the Polkadot. I remember like last year when I joined the Polkadot, also like the time when I come back from like the AI, and then I go back to blockchain. The very first proposal that I see is decentralized future ecosystem development team for Polkadot by PaperMoon. And I actually also follow this proposal from that published by Alberto, and that's a very detailed and promising proposal. And I think many of you guys who just read this proposal last year, you might curious what PaperMoon is doing right now. And yeah, so Alberto, maybe you can give a very brief introduction to yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Tim. And so yeah, let me first, there's no way to make this story a little bit shorter than what I'm going to say. So please bear with me. So yeah, I've been in the Web3 space for a very, very long time. Not as an investor, but just as a person that is curious about the technology. Probably since late 2013. Just very curious about how blockchains work, how it was able to create an environment that people didn't have to trust each other, but it's still secured, right? Which is something really weird in the world that we live today. And so, I'm a mechanical engineer. I did a PhD in internal combustion engines, and so I never thought about working in Web3, even though I followed, Ethereum being born, then smart contracts on Ethereum and so on. And I loved it from a technical perspective. I was never sort of encouraged to sort of say, let's drop my career and everything, and let's just, go and work on this idea. And so, yeah, to me, everything changed when I started working at Nissan here in Barcelona. And, I quickly realized that I didn't like, what I was doing. And I was like, I want to do something that I'm passionate about. And through a connection, I met the founder of Moonbeam, which, the project didn't exist back then. And so, I met with Derek, and Derek kind of we talked about for a long time. And then he kind of gave me the opportunity of being there for Moonbeam, right? And so I've always liked to teach. I've always liked to sort of, I had the idea of doing the PhD because I wanted to become a university professor, right? I love the idea of teaching people something that I'm passionate about. And so I saw this opportunity of being at DAppForge as the closest I could get doing that in an area that I really liked and enjoyed, right? And so I gave it a shot. And so I started working at DAppForge Moonbeam. That's in June 2020. And then slowly, right, but surely I started, the team started growing. We worked on the Moonbeam documentation, and then suddenly I was given the opportunity to create a company that was going to work with the Moonbeam Foundation directly. And I was very lucky. I would say, I was very lucky to be given that opportunity. And so then PaperMoon came to be, right? Initially, PaperMoon was only about 5 people. We were working only with Moonbeam. But the opportunity that PaperMoon provided me was to sort of, okay, now that I have the PaperMoon as a company, we can start working with external people as well, external customers, external clients, right? And so, I think I've met a lot of people in Polkadot, and I've worked together with a lot of people, because one of the good things about DAppForge is that you do developer support, right? And so I met people from all the teams, Bifrost, Hydration, Akala. And when people from those teams are starting kind of moving somewhere else, they kind of knew that PaperMoon was a company that they could go to for developer relations, right? And so, and so, yeah, in 2024, we know the opportunity about the decentralized futures grants. And so in December 2023, I decided, hey, I actually, I've been in Polkadot for some time now, for more than 3 years, almost 4. And I kind of knew what things were missing, right? Because I've been in Polkadot and I know Polkadot very well. I know a lot of people at Parity. I know a lot of people at Web3 Foundation. And so initially we had this proposal about an idea of helping ecosystems like Moonbeam, helping them with documentation, with better, better just general documentation, right? I always gave this example on how at Moonbeam, we use a tool called Chopsticks, developed by the Akala folks. And it was nowhere documented. And we used it so much that I was like, how can this tool that is so valuable for people in Polkadot is not properly documented? And so, the idea started taking shape and form. And after very, very back and forth with many people, we decided to launch this proposal, in which basically is, initially was, let's do developer documentation. And then we also have another vertical about, developer support for the Chinese developer community specifically, right? And then, yeah, the things started morphing, because you always have an idea and then something else comes to be. And so we quickly realized that Polkadot needed something more than just ecosystem specific documentation. There is no docs.polkadot.com, right? And so we went back to the Web3 Foundation and said, hey, you know, like initially we didn't want to do this, you know, because we wanted to start with a small footprint, but we believe that this is something that is super important because, you know, Polkadot didn't have cohesive code documentation. Like people would tell you 10 different pages, right, for Polkadot documentation. And so, yeah, the Web3 Foundation liked that idea, and that's what we're like doing mainly right nowadays, right? So if you go to docs.polkadot.com, I wouldn't say that all the content that we like it's written by us because we've had external contributors, but you know we've been the main kind of driving force of the documentation. So sorry to extend a little bit, but yeah, that's how PaperMoon came to be, and nowadays, you know, we are around 18 people. We have a bunch of people working on Polkadot, and yeah, what we do basically is provide the best documentation possible for Polkadot and try to help developers on board, but also, you know, more experienced developers, and just that they have a place where they can go to get answers to their questions, basically.
Yeah, I still remember like back in my university when I started like learning about like Polkadot, and I visited like the substrate.io, like the doc of substrate back then. And I can like barely understand anything in that doc when I was like a student. Like, it's really, really hard for like a new beginner.
It was very technical. It was very technical, and I actually use the substrate docs a lot, but for very technical stuff, like, you know, XEM and like, you know, how the fee mechanism works in Polkadot, which is very technically challenging. But there was very little documentation on like, you know, how to make the technology accessible. And you got to think that a lot of times you want to sell the product as something that is pre-packaged, right? Like not everyone has to understand how the underlying fee mechanism works. Like maybe I just want to launch my own chain, and then as I get used to it and get familiar with it, I want to go into the deeper roots, right? And so that was something that was missing for sure. I agree.
Okay, so based on that, like after 1 year of PaperMoon, like how can I say it? Like what kind of improvement that you confidently say that you guys already improved for Polkadot after 1 year?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think like, you know, this has been a learning experience for us as well, because one of the things that I can confirm like for sure is that each of the customers or partners that we work with have very different niches and very different products, right? And so when we start working on documentation for a new partner like Polkadot, you know, Polkadot is very, very unique, 100%, right? And so, you know, it's like the only project that we work with, which it has a very complex system in which you have, you know, the Polkadot relay chain that then, you know, you want to launch chains. And so, you know, it has this SDK that is fairly complex. And there's a lot of definitions, a lot of things about the architecture, right? And so for us this year, you know, it was also for us to learn how to work as a structured team. Okay, how do we get external requests from people and we process them internally, right? I mean, we came like January 2024, we were only 6 people. And by August, we were like 16. And so, you know, we grew a lot as a company, and it was a lot about learning. How do we actually, you know, become a company of a bunch of individuals that can create really good content and really good experiences for developers. And so for us this year for Polkadot has been about, you know, learning a lot, to be honest, about how to improve, and also learning a lot about how can we write about the Polkadot product, right? Which is super, super hard. As we all know, we also have been working a lot on like the smart contract documentation, but I think we can discuss that topic a little bit down the road. But for us, it's been a lot about, you know, how do we cater Polkadot for its very unique needs, basically.
Okay. So I also like prepare like a list of questions. I think like you already introduced about PaperMoon, but I'm also like curious about like what's the missions in the Web3 developer space that you guys are like focusing on.
Yeah, and that's great, right? So I mean, I always tell the story about when I started learning about Web3, like not back in the day, but as a developer, right? Like, so this was basically in December 2019 when, you know, the pandemic was still, it was pre-pandemic, but, you know, in February, there was already like signs about, you know, COVID and so on. And so, you know, in December, when I made the decision of switching, I started learning by myself, right? I started doing developer courses online and following tutorials and guides online. And to me, the most frustrating experience that I had was when I was following a guide and I was halfway through and the guy stopped working, because there was like a broken dependency on something. And then something that you thought it was going to take like an hour, it took 5 hours because, we were fixing for 4 hours a dependency or something, and you had to do research and so on, right? And so for me, the first thing that I always try to and it's really hard because it's always really hard to make sure that documentation is perfect, up to date, because Web3 is such a fast moving space that it's very challenging. But, I think PaperMoon always wants to be on top of documentation to make sure that it's always accessible and it always works, right? And so I wouldn't say that that's our mission, but I would say definitely that's like one of our top goals or priorities. And so we want to make sure that, we can provide the best documentation possible for our partners and make sure that, the developer journey is as pleasant as possible, right? It doesn't matter how complex your product is, or because at the end of the day, you can always find, you can always find room for what you want to do in Polkadot at the end. You don't have to come to Polkadot and be a core blockchain developer, right? You can develop a tool, you can develop a website, right? So that's one of the things that we try to focus on.
But yeah, from your perspective, what is the definition of a very good content? Because I see you mentioned about that term a lot, right?
Yeah, so it's challenging because it depends on the content that you're writing about, right? So if you're writing about something that is very, very niche and very specific, you got to make sure that concepts are clear, are well understood, and that examples are always functioning, right? But if you're only talking about high entry level tutorials, you're focusing more that the tutorial has to work, right? If I write a tutorial on how to deploy an ERC20 token, which is very, very simple, and I don't want to touch about the concepts of an ERC20 token, it's a super quick start guide. It has to work 100%. It has to, something that is super quick, super easy to do, and it has to work, right? And so I wouldn't say there's a magic recipe. I would say it's just about, you got to understand who is your target audience and what type of content you're writing. I think that to me is crucial, the first step, who's your target audience and what type of content for sure.
Yeah, thanks for your sharing. Okay, so how can project and team in Polkadot right now can collaborate with PaperMoon to level up their dev effort? Because I think right now, in Polkadot ecosystem, as you mentioned, we're not very strong in developer experience, and all the team, even the parent team or tooling team, they don't have a very friendly user documentation yet. So just curious, how can the project can reach out to PaperMoon to improve their docs?
Yeah, that's a good point. So, I mean, I'm a very reachable person, right? I mean, I'm in a bunch of Polkadot specific groups and things like that. So I'm always being very open for people to TM me directly in Telegram. Just to give you an example, the POP team, you probably know the POP team. They did the POP CLI, right, and so on. And so they just ping me in Telegram. It's hey, we want to work with you guys on the documentation. How can we do it, right? And so they actually did the content themselves, but then they created the PR. We kind of gave them feedback on the PR and so on. And then we worked really well together at the end. And then we launched the documentation, right? And so at the end of the day, I think what's important for people to understand in Polkadot is that when you write a tool and when you do something, even if it's treasury funded or not treasury funded, writing the tool is as important as writing the documentation. Because if you write a tool and there's no documentation, it might as well not exist, right? But then if you write a tool that is then properly documented, people are going to learn about it through the documentation, right? And they're going to make sure that it's helpful. Going back to the Chopsticks example, which I think our Chopsticks documentation is still not there yet, because we're taking on so much effort, so different verticals right now. But our team wrote Chopsticks documentation for Moonbeam because we used it so much. Now we're this has to be documented somewhere, right? And so now the idea was, okay, Chopsticks is a super valuable tool. How other people in the ecosystem need to know that it exists and need to know what they can do with it. And so the main way to do that is you either go to a conference and do a speech about it, which I did a lot of times back in the days, or you write documentation and make sure that it's shareable and people can access it, and you create tutorials in which you use the tool, right? And so I think how can people collaborate with us is just make sure that you reach out to us, open a GitHub issue on the documentation repo. And then we're very active. We're very active on being on top of things, getting back to people and so on. So I would say that's the easiest way to start. If you go to the Polkadot -docs GitHub repo, which is the main content of the documentation, you will see also a contributing guide and other things that can help you get started on contributing to the documentation as well.
Yeah, but also like from your end, like, do you have any like specific expectations that you like have in mind when let's say people like, reach out to you for collaborations?
Yeah, so I mean, for us, like it's kind of clear that we cannot document everything in the world, right? Because at the end of the day, you could be even documenting a tool that ends up being a malicious tool. And so, we take a look at the kind of like reputation of the team, where they treasury funded, right? These kind of things in which like gives us an idea that this is like a legit tool, that it's a legit project, a legit team, and then we just collaborate with them, right? I mean, if they do the contribution to the documentation and then we just review it, that's a lot easier for us because we have a limited bandwidth. But if they expect us to do the documentation, we can do it, but it takes a little bit of time, right? And so I would say this is the expectations that I would like to manage from that perspective.
I see. So how did PaperMoon start working with Polkadot itself? I remember like PaperMoon and Moonbeam, there's also a relationship between the two, right?
Yeah. So I can I did touch some of these points initially, but I can go into more details, right? So we started working with Polkadot basically since we started working with Moonbeam, right? Because Moonbeam and Polkadot are the same thing in the sense that they're part of the same ecosystem. And so, I was very present in a lot of Sub-Zero conferences. I was very present in all of the codeds, right? And so we were like trying to push what developers could do in Polkadot through initiatives that we had on Moonbeam, right? And so I would say that early on, PaperMoon already started working with Polkadot, before the Decentralized Futures Grant. And now, after the Decentralized Futures Grant, things change a little bit because now we're like, we have a dedicated team that is going to help Polkadot itself, right? And so, what I'll do is that, go into a little bit more detail of what our verticals are and like how do we distribute like the work that we do. And so, one vertical is basically has two main points, which is basically, well, three main points, apologies, which is basically create content, right? So that's like, creating a tutorial, creating a guide, creating a page, or, whatever. Help hackathons, right? So basically what we do there is that we don't organize the hackathons ourselves. We don't execute them. Like, we're not responsible for delivering the hackathon. But what we can do is be technical support, on-site support, like help hackers if it's a physical hackathon, an in-person hackathon, we can be there helping hackers and so on, and then being a technical judge, right? So, we can help on judging from a technical perspective because, our team is a team of engineers and we understand Polkadot and how it works and its capabilities. And the third point is to do support, right? So, we can help doing support to teams. That is something that we actually started doing a little bit more recently with the smart contract side of things. So we have people in our team on like the community Discord that when they have issues, we take a look at the issue, we try to understand what the problem is, because the smart contract bit on Polkadot is still very early, and there's issues being uncovered all the time, and trying to make sure that it's Ethereum compatible and so on. So that's on the vertical one. Vertical two is related to specifically to the Chinese developer community. And so with that, we work with, for example, One Block Plus or Polka World to create content and use them as distribution channels, right? So we're doing developer educational courses. We've done a couple on the parachain side of things, or 3 on the parachain side of things, and we're actually doing one right now for smart contracts, and in which we do like homeworks. We review homeworks, we do mini hackathons, we do courses with slides, with code that it's on GitHub so that people can check it out, fork the code and play with it, right? So it's a very laborious effort because, we do everything from 0 to 100 basically. And we only use distribution partners to sort of distribute the content itself. And then we also do like developer support, like for the Chinese developer community. And last but not least, hackathons also in the APAC region as well, hackathon support, and yeah, I would say mainly it, and write general content, like do an article that is attributed via Bilibili or whatever, right? So yeah, and then the third vertical, was the one that we added a little bit later on, which is basically own the Polkadot documentation site, docs.polkadot.com, right? So, you know, we've been using a framework called Make Docs, so open source, to create documentation, and so we're like the responsibles for handling it, right? If there's like, you know, new features, new plugins, you know, we try to find like new things to add to the documentation, right? So that's the third vertical that we're doing. One of the things that we're actually trying to introduce a little bit more is AI-oriented content, right? So, you know, now you can go to docs.polkadot.com/LLMS.txt. That will actually, you know, has the entire content of the documentation in a single TXT file if you want to feed that to an AI model. Sometimes it's very large, the file, and so we're trying to do things in which we can segment the files for AI models into different categories. And that's like a secondary job that we're doing as well. So yeah, I would say that these are the main three verticals, and that's basically how we work with Polkadot right now.
But after like sticking with Polkadot ecosystem for a while, like what do you realize like the differences between developers in Polkadot compared with like developers in other ecosystem, and how you guys like can reach out differently to handle them?
Yeah, it's quite challenging, I would say, especially depends on the seniority or experience of that developer, right? Because if it's a developer that, you know, I'm just starting as a developer, what can I do in Polkadot? It's very challenging because the Polkadot itself is quite complex. And so I'm a big fan of the work that the PVA does, because I think the PVA does something that we can do, like from a documentation perspective, which is basically train developers that are probably not that familiar with Web3 in general, right? To have a really solid base knowledge of Web3 and then Polkadot as well, right? Because I know they have courses on general cryptography, right? And things like that. And then they start touching more, you know, Polkadot specific, courses. And so I think it really depends, like I said earlier, on like who are the developers who you're trying to cater and what type of content you're trying to work on, right? And so, you know, if it's right now for us, it's a bit easier because we're trying to cater more to smart contract developers. And smart contract developers are very similar to like general purpose developers, right? And so the content you can create is a lot easier to write, a lot easier to make it digestible. And so, yeah, I would say that we need to understand what developer are we targeting, and then I think we did a really good job with Parity initially to do what we call the developer user personas and the developer journeys, and that helped us create the strategy around documentation.
But right now, like since the proposal of like Polkadot Asset Hub from Rob, the Plaza, and I think like after like 6 months, like there has been like a lot of things change, and the direction of the ecosystem also like shift towards the EVM compatible blockchain. So I'm curious, like from your side, like do you also like now like focus like entirely on like smart contract solidity, smart contract development, or you still work on like Polkadot SDK?
That's a great question as well. And I want to correct you there, because it's important that the community starts using the right terminology. It's like, it's not EVM compatible, right? It's Ethereum compatible. And, you know, if you want, we can discuss about the main difference. But going back to your point, I would say like, there's going to be two products, right? There's going to be the smart contract product, and there's going to be the parachain product. Those two products are going to exist. They're going to coexist side by side. And the idea now is that, you know, if you want to build native, this is something that I personally use, the name native smart contracts on Polkadot, instead of going to a parachain, which is, it's a completely separate kind of sovereign world. If you want to stay in the Polkadot governed world, let's say, you can now do it, right? Because now Western Hub, I mean, it had many names like Statement, then Asset Hub, and now it's going to be Polkadot Hub. It's going to be the place where you can build smart contracts, you know, that are Ethereum compatible, meaning that you can write in Solidity, you know, and then you're going to be able to build smart contract based applications. And so I would say that it's not that we're working. I mean, right now we're probably focusing a little bit more on the smart contract but it's not that because we're like, you know, we don't believe in parachains. It's because like the main content for parachains exists. It's already there, right? So for a smart contract, we have to build it from zero, right? So you need a lot more resources and a lot more time to be able to deliver content from zero. And so and also like a key role that we're actually doing is providing product feedback to the Parity core devs on things that are not functioning well on the Ethereum compatible layer, right? So yesterday, for example, we realized that, you know, when you use Talisman on Remix, there's a certain weird behavior. And so we actually analyzed it and we understood, we didn't understand the why it happened, but we understood what was happening, right? And so we actually reported that to Parity, and then Parity engineers go and try to understand the why it happened, right? And so we have created this really good working relationship with Parity, in which we've been like the users of the product, and they actually are fixing the things that us as users, you know, have been finding. And so going back to that part of the question, it's not that we're not working on the parachain documentation, it's Polkadot SDK documentation. Sorry, it's that like right now there's a lot more work to do in the smart contract because it's a product that it's from zero, right? How long has the Polkadot SDK product been around? You know, years. And the smart contract product is something that they've been trying to push in 8 months from zero, right? So it's a lot more challenges there for sure.
I'm just curious, like if it's like Ethereum compatible, the main thing that we have to focus on is like PolkaVM and the underlying things, if I'm correct. Why don't like we reuse like all the materials that already there on the higher level smart contract development?
Like what materials?
I don't know, like because you say like we have to build from scratch all the documentation for smart contract on Polkadot Hub. Some like when you say like from scratch, I also like imagine that like you repair like all the material related to like ERC20, Uniswap v2, something like that. And
yeah, so I mean,
whether we reuse, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you brought a great example, Uniswap v2, right? So Maggie and Nico from our team tried to deploy Uniswap v2 for like a month and a half, basically. And they hit a new issue, right? And so they went back to Parity. Hey, we found this issue. And they're like, okay, there's this workaround. And so like, you know, they got them blocked and they got blocked again. Go back to Parity, right? And this is the problem. It's like the product being built is not a EVM equivalent chain, right? It's not a one-to-one representation. And there's pros and cons to that, right? The pros is that you are not using an EVM, you're using a RISC-V based VM, which is more general purpose. You can like, you know, we've all heard, like saw the tweet from like, you know, you're running Doom on this machine, right? That you cannot do in the EVM. The EVM only has a certain set of instructions that they're very specific, and you have to play with your imagination to achieve what you want to do. All right. And so that's why the content cannot be like, has to be written kind of from zero, right? Because deploying an ERC20 is probably, you can do it without changing a thing, okay? But then you have, for example, okay, you need to connect to West End or West End Hub instead of Sepolia, right? So you cannot really just copy paste. You always have to check a few things here and there. And so like tutorials are very catered to this product because it's not one-to-one, right? For Hard Hat, you cannot just grab the movement documentation on Hard Hat, copy paste it, and then just change the RPC endpoint in the network. You have to install the Hard Hat Polkadot plugin, right? And then you have to make sure that in the Hard Hat configuration file, you enable a few things here and there. And then, you know, you need to make sure, so the flow, it's not one-to-one. And then that's why it's challenging, because we have been uncovering this blockers, and then we need to document them to make sure that developers understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, like in the development lifecycle, even though like it's Ethereum compatible, but like it's not like 100% is like similar, right? And just a very small thing, and it can like break the whole like user experience.
And we can talk about that, right? So what is Asset Hub or Polkadot Hub, right? From a smart contract capabilities, right? It's not running an EVM, it's running a PolkaVM, right? And so the software that it's able to run, it's not in the same, let's say, programming language, right? Because even though you're talking about Solidity, yeah, in both worlds you can write about on Solidity, but Solidity is a higher level language, right? It compiles into a lower level language that we can call bytecode. That's like one of the basically names that you use for it. And the bytecode itself, it's kind of what the machine understands. And so that makes it, because it's not EVM, that makes a huge difference, right? Why? Because an ERC20 on Ethereum can weight 20 kilobytes, or sorry, 4 kilobytes, which is nothing. But an ERC20 contract on PolkaVM can weight 10 times more or 15 times more because it's a general purpose program, right? And so then you start hitting issues. MetaMask doesn't work because MetaMask is capped to 28 kilobytes, right? And so it's not, and there's a lot of challenges, right? And so what we're trying to do is make sure that those challenges are super smooth for developers and they don't hit issues. And that's probably as big of a challenge as developing it itself. So
as you have like a huge exposure to like the very low level tech of Polkadot Hub right now, like PolkaVM, what's your, I mean, like, what's the expectation for the Polkadot Hub to be launched for like a mass development from developers? Like, what's the expected way from your point of view?
Yeah, so this is my personal take, is that I feel that this is a cutting edge technology, right? It's very, very bleeding edge of the state of the art that exists. And if you go back to the EVM when it was the bleeding edge, back in 2015, there were things that they had to improve, to optimize. And so personally, I think that this is like, you just had a baby and the baby needs to mature in order for it to be a working adult, and so what we're trying to do there is try to do everything super, super fast, to go to market. And there's a time in which we have to sort of do quality assurance, make sure that, that hard hat can be used, Foundry can be used. And that's going to take time. Like, it's going to take like a feedback loop. You know what I mean? Like the moment that we have starting real projects developing on top of PolkaVM, they're going to hit issues. Hopefully not, but it's unrealistic, because even in Moonbeam, that was much like a closer representation of Ethereum, we had issues, right? And so there's going to be a learning curve. There's going to be a development curve. And then it's like PolkaVM is going to take time to reach a maturity level that it's going to be basically running by itself, right? So, yeah.
Okay, I think so what the different things can developer build on Polkadot right now? I think we mentioned.
Yeah, and that's I would say basically like a smart contracts, right? Like parachains, but also applications, right? Like people don't think about this enough, but you don't have to build a smart contract. You don't have to build a parachain. You can always build applications, right? A great example of this is Multics, just to give an example, or a wallet, right? But Multics is like a multi-sig UI, right? So you can, manage multi-sigs and Polkadot and so on. And that has nothing to do with like a blockchain. That has nothing to do with a smart contract. It's just basically a great application that is built and it's used on top of Polkadot. They're similar for wallets, but we all know wallets. And so at the end of the day, that's why I wanted to bring up like a different example. And so, I think those are the three main things I would say, basically. Applications, smart contracts, and then parachains.
But I think right now that Polkadot need more apps than the infra, right?
It depends on the kind of apps, right? The kind of apps that I was mentioning, it's more like, apps that bring value to Polkadot without necessarily bringing users, right? So I guess the type of apps that you're referring to are the apps like are built with smart contracts, right? In which, a DEX or a lending platform or an NFT marketplace, right? So I would call it a different type of apps, right? And then both of them are extremely valid, and they're like, different kinds of developers that we're catering there.
So what's some of the most common challenges you see Polkadot developer facing today?
Yeah, that's also a great question. So I'm going to dissect it, right, between smart contracts and parachains. I think Polkadot SDK based, I think that it's still a fairly complex product, right? It's, you don't only have to, code do the code yourself, even though there are templates nowadays. And I think OpenSapling is trying to provide more and more templates. But also like the sort of, the core time concept for people that have no clue, it's a really complex concept to grasp your head around, right? And then, Polkadot SDK releases, you have to update your chain and so on. And so I think having the capability of like, and I think that there's like an idea around this that I'm not going to mention just in case it's still sort of, secret, but, how do you make a parachain, like the possibility of launching a parachain super easy without, like all the complexity that there is around it, right? And so I think that's probably the main challenge that developers are facing on the Parachain side or Polkadot SDK side. I think on the smart contract side, and we just had a couple of hackathons around this, is basically like that things are still not working as expected, right? Like, when people use hard hat, they face issues. When people use, Remix, they face issues. And so this is what I mentioned before, the maturity of the project itself. I think, we're still working on improving that. And yeah, I think those are the two main things, if I must say, on the Polkadot developer side.
I remember like a few weeks ago, like I saw an announcement, not related to this, but I saw an announcement from Parity for the Polkadot development portal. And I think it's a very cool thing for like deploying new blockchain with like a few clicks.
Yeah, that's one of the examples I was thinking about, but I didn't know if there was like official news about that already, like because they had the idea and they showcased it, but I think that product is going to be important because it's going to help kind of, but that's still like that takes you kind of halfway, right? Because you still have to figure out core time and core time renewal and things like that. So I think it's a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, this question is obvious. We already know
quite
well. Yeah, I think they also like a similar one. All right. And this part, like many people, like many audiences, they also like quite curious about is like the Polkadot developer hackathon guide, which is also like we're gonna like walk through the Polkadot developer hackathon guide, because like around like in 2 weeks in like June, like OpenGuild gonna have one hack camp in like that Da Nang, Vietnam, and we're gonna want like developers to learn about the hackathon guide and also like build more applications on the Polkadot Hub. So maybe like, it would be great if like you can help us to guide through the Polkadot hackathon guide and how they can like utilize the resource in the maximum way to learn about like Polkadot.
Yeah, sure thing. 1 second, as I'm having issues with screen sharing. Let me see if I can fix this really quickly. All right. Second. Oh, I have to restart Zoom. I don't know if you want me to restart Zoom, and I'll be right back. And
that's okay. I can like share the
all right. Yeah, let's do it. All right.
Let me
yeah, so basically we started the idea with some folks at the Web3 Foundation of the Hackathon Survival Guide on Polkadot, and the idea was that, and by the way, this is not like an effort that it's only maintained by us. We have people from Parity, people from Web0 also helping here. And the idea is like, okay, if we launch a hackathon tomorrow on Polkadot, this is a resource that you can always share with hackers, right? And so this is part of what we've discussed, this diagram, super simple diagram right here, which is like, okay, if you're a Polkadot developer, what 3 things you can do? You can build parachains, you can build smart contracts, you can build applications, right? And so what we've done right now is focus more on the first 2, parachains and smart contracts. And then you can see that the next 2 top points just right below have 2 separate links, right? So you have the resources for Polkadot Hub, which is basically smart contracts, and resources for parachain developers. And so in here, the idea is that you will find everything that it should be up to date. It should be functioning on how to use the Polkadot Remix IDE, how to use Hardhat, how to use any of these libraries that allow you to interact with smart contracts, right? And so this will take you to the Polkadot documentation page. As you can see right now at the top, this is not the official URL, and it's because we're still actively developing it. And so we've not migrated this content to the docs.polkadot.com portal, okay? So this is all staging, what we call staging. And so, yeah, we hope to launch this in the following 2 weeks. And so any of these things should help you get started, should help you find the page that has a specific, guide, tutorial, a developer page on how do you, for example, in this case, how do you create a basic smart contract, okay? And if you go on the left-hand side, there, and then can you go a little bit higher or go back to the page? And on the left-hand side menu, you see at the top, yeah, a little bit up. No, go to the other page. Yeah, okay, there. On the left-hand side, you will see create a smart contract. And then you have to test and deploy, right? So you have the different steps on like, okay, I want to create a smart contract. After I do the smart contract, I want to test and deploy it. And then after it, I want to create a DApp. And then I want to create a DApp with VM or Ether.js. So we even created tutorials on how to do the full process of a smart contract plus an application on top of the smart contract. I mean, this is all very entry level, right? This is not like, it's not going to be the application that it's going to change the world, but it's going to help developers kind of like go through the flow of how do you do everything with like the typical libraries that Ethereum developers are used to. So that's the main idea of the hackathon guide. And if you go back to the hackathon guide for smart contracts, you will find all these resources in a single place, right? Which makes it really easy for developers that are, working on a hackathon. And we also included videos, right? Because for example, this is the last one from Encode Club. It's an introduction to smart contract development on Polkadot. And you can see that there's like really a lot of things to unpack here. So it depends like if you prefer videos or if you prefer a sort of like written tutorial. So yeah, and then if you go to the parachain one at the top right, no, on GitHub.
Oh, GitHub, okay.
Yeah, this is the smart contract, and if you click on the parachain one, this is kind of the same. But then for the parachain product, okay, how do you get started? We created what we call a 0 to hero tutorial that you can click at the near the top, in which at the top there you have a 0 to hero tutorial, in which allows you to kind of, okay, if I want to launch a parachain, what are all the different steps that I have to do? Okay, so set up a template. I need to then I can build a custom palette. I need to do palette unit testing. I need to add the palette to the runtime. I need to do benchmarking. And then I deploy to the Paseo testnet. Okay, and after I deploy it, I need to obtain core time. So all the different steps that as a parachain developer, you have to follow from 0, if you have nothing, to hero, which is like you have a parachain running on Paseo testnet, okay? So yeah, I would say that's the main content of the Hackathon Survival Guide. But the core idea is to make sure that everything is in a single digestible page, and you don't have to be clicking around in the documentation to find it, right? Because I mean, sometimes hackers have 2 days or 24 hours, right? So like, it's really hard for them in 24 hours or 2 days or 1 day to get used to how the documentation layout is and so on. So having a specific guide for hackathons is always helpful.
Yeah, I didn't like view the hackathon guide in details, but like now, like when I click on like tooling, and now I see like there's a lot of resources here. But definitely like if this can be like distributed to more like developers, definitely there's gonna be like more builders build on Polkadot, because I think like this guide written here is in like a very user-friendly way.
Yeah, definitely. And you can see that we have also badges, right? Like set up a template is kind of for beginners, building a custom palette is kind of for beginners. But then when you do pilot unit testing, okay, you might need to, you might need to know a little bit more about, certain topics. And so we also added like these tutorial badges that you can see this one at the top, for example, Tin. If you go to the top, you will see that the tutorial is for beginners, right? Like right below the title. And so you have it, you have the different kind of tutorials depending on the type of developer that you are as well. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
As we come close to the end of the community call, there's also a bonus section here. Like Kristen from like DAppForge, when he knows about like our community call today about like developer relations, Kristen, he's built a product to help like Substrate and also like Solidity builders to like using AI to develop on the IDE like its code. And Kristen like really wants to show the code to just give a quick demo on his product, and hope that you okay with that.
Yeah, for sure.
So Kristen, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Hello, how's everybody doing?
Yeah, all good.
Gotcha, perfect. Yeah, so like I'll make this quick because I also have like a hard stop soon because I have to go run do some place. Pretty much, yeah. Hello, everyone. Like my name is Christian. I've been in this ecosystem for a while. I did the Polkadot Blockchain Academy in Hong Kong in 2024. feels like a lot longer has gone by. It feels like almost a decade has gone by, but that's crypto. And while I was there at the PBA, but also through my own personal experience, what I saw really clearly is that building stuff in blockchain is very difficult. When you want to do dApps and Solidity, there's like a lot of gotchas that you have to be careful for that can always trick you down, especially like gas optimization. When you're doing stuff with Substrate, there's a lot of like different things you have to be mindful for, like benchmarking and etc. And I'm certain everyone here has used AI before for their developer journey, right? That's normal. I myself use it all the time, obviously. But when I started using AI for the first time, specifically like for Solidity, I've always saw that there were some things that just didn't work out. Like, for example, it really annoyed me sometimes when Claude would always get the OpenSep libraries wrong. Then you have to fix them, and you have to fix stuff in the code, and it just actually slows you down. So what I wanted to do, and let's see, I don't know if I can share my screen here. Oh yeah, there we go. So what I wanted to do was essentially build, can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, I can see.
Perfect. So what I wanted to do was essentially build like an AI tool that was pretty much like specialized in like Substrate and Solidity that could really like analyze and do the parts that other models like Claude and ChatGPT don't do right. So, I mean, and I'll share you in the link to my website. It's pretty much like an extension. You can download it on VS Code, Cursor, or Windsurf, or any like forks of VS Code, right? Choose your favorite. I personally use Cursor because I like Cursor a lot. And so, I mean, it's very simple. You put in here a prompt, it provides code for you, and you can just like use it. Now, one of the main differences between this and current competitors is that if you try to use Claude, many times it will, or like ChatGPT, it will get the OpenSep libraries wrong. It will do them like incorrect libraries. And yes, you can always prompt it and say, hey, can you please use this correct library? This is wrong. So you will get Claude and ChatGPT to produce the correct code eventually, which is good. But I never like that you have to consistently help the model figure out what is the right code to produce. So we just wanted to build something that gets it right on the first try. And so essentially, I mean, this is pretty much how it is. You put in like a prompt here, it provides code, and like you can all try it out. We did this for Substrate, Solidity, Ink, and like even Rust to like cover all fields. However, to be honest, you will see the best results with Solidity because we wanted to be ready for the launch of Polkadot Asset Hub, right? Because we're going to see a lot of folks doing a lot of like Solidity dApps on it. We wanted to be ready for that launch. In the future, we're also going to be integrating some specifically Polkadot documentation into it. So that way the AI can also be mindful on the specific the specifics and launching on Polkadot, right? Like how to properly configure a hardhat file, which is why I'm so thankful for you, Alberto, and you and PaperMoon and all the great work you guys are doing for documentation, because the documentation you guys produce is excellent, to be honest. I remember like when I first joined the ecosystem and like navigating stuff with Substrate.io, it was good, but after seeing the work you guys do in PaperMoon, I can just say double thumbs up. It is excellent. So thank you so much for all the hard work you folks are doing. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much quick, like my presentation. I don't want to take up too much time. There's other people after me, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, thank you a lot, Kristen. That's a very great demo, and it would be really if you can send us like a link, and I will definitely send that to the OpenGuild community so that people like can try the app and also like just install the plugin on their VS Code and like start like working on Solidity and also like Polkadot development in general.
Yeah, correct. I'll put it right here. Where's the chat? Because I usually use Google Meet. Ah, there we go. There you go. I just sent it here.
Okay, yeah,
And
thank you.
if anybody has any questions, I'm pretty reachable. I'm always like on Telegram, so you can always like feel free to reach out to me in any way. I'm also always very active on Discord. So if anyone has any questions about anything, please feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah, thank you. Also, let me share the screen. Okay, so as we come close to the end of the community call today, we also like our community OpenGuild also like means a lot of NFT for like POP or like proof of participation. So if you're interested, like you can like scan the QR code and claim the NFT, and we have like a lot of benefit for like people. Yeah, for like people when like you collect like a lot of like POP, and then you can also like exchange the POP for other things. All right, and now I'm gonna give the mic back to Patricia.
Okay. Thank you so much, Alberto and Tin. Let me see. I think I actually don't have anything else. I think that's it for today. Can you see me?
Yes, I
Can you
can
hear
see.
me? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Alberto, can you say maybe like a few things for like people in Polkadot, what they should do, and yeah, to prepare for like the next wave of like Polkadot development, so that we can like.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, right? So I would definitely say that if you want to become like a more experienced developer and build more in-depth tools and things like that, definitely check out the PVA because I think they're doing a great job on like, educating developers. But yeah, I think also, one of the things that I see more in the Web3 space is that people create problems to then like pitch their solutions, right? And so make sure that when you build products, you're actually solving real solutions. Sorry, when you're building solutions, that you're solving real problems that exist, and you're not just creating new problems to sort of solve it yourself, right? And so I would say those are my two main recommendations, and just be prepared because like native smart contracts are coming to Polkadot, and that's going to open up a new way, like possibilities, a bunch of new possibilities, right? And so if you're a smart contract developer, start checking our content out, start participating in some hackathons that we're doing, like getting developer feedback and so on. So, and yeah, thanks Tin, thanks Patricia and the OpenGuild folks for the opportunity as well.
Yeah, thank you, Alberto. All right, that's also like the end of today's community call, and hope that we can also like collaborate with like PaperMoon in the future community call, and also like in the future activities, not only the community call. And if you have any question, again, like send to the OpenGuild community Discord, or also like send to like the official Polkadot Discord, and we're gonna support that. And yeah, so thank you everyone, and see you in the future.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks
Alberto.
everyone. Bye. Cheers.